Aware that this meeting will be live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. My name is Josie Greenhouse. I'm a Scrutiny Officer, and alongside me is Darren Knight, who is Deputy Chief Exec. Councillors, I assume you know the emergency procedure by now. There's no planned test this evening, and if the alarm sounds, we will leave the building and assemble outside in the central reservation on Regent's Grove. The pre-scrutiny questions and answers have been published on the Council's website. The first item on the agenda this evening is the appointment of the Chair for the municipal year 2025 to 2026. Therefore, members of the committee, are there any nominations? Thank you, Councillor Bode.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Felt, thank you. Are there any further nominations? No, thank you. The proposal is for Councillor Phillips to be appointed as Chair of the Housing Scrutiny Committee. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, thank you. And at this point,
Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Thank you very much, members, for your support for me to continue this year. I will do my best for the committee for the coming year. Thank you, Josie, for starting the meeting off. We haven't done this in prior years, but this year we want to appoint a vice chair for the committee, and for when I'm not available, etc. So may I have a nomination for Vice Chair? Councillor Falk.
Councillor Bode.
May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dixon, thank you. Councillor Bode, are you okay with that? Yep. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour of Councillor Bode for Vice Chair?
Sorry, Chair, through you, you should ask for any nominations before we vote.
Beg your pardon,
Sorry.
any other nominations? Thank you. Well, let's redo the vote then, please. Thank you. This is also a good point to welcome to the committee Councillor Brown. It's his first meeting, and look forward to working with you on the Housing Scrutiny Committee. So one of our key roles, Councillor Brown, I think it's a good point to remind all members actually, is about the assurance and challenging the officers to what's going on with the housing. You will have in your programme, Councillor Brown, on page, I think it is page 4 of item 6, the terms of reference. We're here to serve our residents primarily, but also to review and challenge the progress in terms of compliance, safety, treating our residents fairly, and so questions are very much welcome and encouraged throughout the meeting this evening. And and I believe that we have training organised with HQN for Councillor Brown and indeed Councillor Jones, who wasn't on the council when the training was done last year, 12th of June, 2 p.m. And obviously that's open to everybody, not just members of the committee, but all councillors. So any councillors who are watching this evening are very much welcome to join us or join the training on June the 2nd, 2 p.m. And if so, would they please contact member services directly. So, moving on to item 3. Apologies and substitutes. Councillor Phelps.
I'm substituting for Councillor Barton.
Thank you. Councillor Melrose.
I will be representing Councillor Atkins tonight. Unfortunately, she's unwell.
So we have apologies from Councillor Adkins. Apologies from Ms Barker, I believe, as well, Head of Housing. We have with us several officers tonight, as well as Josie Greenhouse. We've got Mia Matthews, who's corrected me on my right, and then for the housing team, Paul Smith, Jen Morrison, Phil Dark and Simon Hodges, as well as Darren Knight as Deputy Chief Executive. Members, may I ask for any declarations of interest? Nothing to declare. Thank you. Very straightforward. So we'll start to move towards the substance of the meeting, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of March. Could I ask members, please, if you have any comments or questions from those minutes? Councillor Gorman.
So at the last meeting, and as is stated in the minutes, we were told members would be sent an email with more detail about the garages, of the percentage that are lettable condition. We have not received that email.
Yes, I'll follow that up.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? One question for councillors, specifically Messrs Barton, Collins and Jones. You volunteered to be part of the mock pre-inspection exercise. Has that happened? I'm getting
No, it has
Councillor
not.
Jones.
No, it has not.
Okay, could we please give an action to Councillor Adkins and to the housing team to follow up specifically, make sure that councillors Barton, Collins and Jones are involved. And Councillor Phelps, could you pass it also on to Councillor Barton, please? Any other questions or comments on the minutes? So may I have a proposer for those minutes with those two comments added? Councillor Bode, yeah, may I have
I'll
a second?
propose acceptance of the minutes of 27th of May.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Collins, thank you. May I have a show of hands of all those in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. And let's then move on to item 6, which is the work programme. Mr. Knight, are you going to start us off on this? Yeah.
So we'll take the report and the work programme as read. The work programme sets out a number of agenda items for obviously today's meeting and the future agenda items for future committee meetings. There is obviously a broad range of activity looking for the committee to scrutinise over the coming months. So there are some notable highlights there, which will be the Pennington's endpoint review, where Latrice, our consultant, will be coming to the committee directly, so you can hear from her directly and get assurance, independent assurance on our progress. Within the work plan, there's been some suggestions in terms of areas to also consider, which is the compliance to the council's lettable standard. So that is the standard we set for homes that we let and how well we comply with that standard. And there's also potentially a review into fire safety action recommendations and programme performance. So those ideas have been put forward to consider for the chairs group on the work programme, but also be interested to understand from the committee if there are any other work programme ideas that you'd like to do a deep dive into or scrutinise further as part of us looking at the schedule of agenda items over the coming months. So that was probably my intro.
Thank you. Councillors, may I have any questions, comments, concerns, please? Councillor Bird.
Yeah, Darren won't be surprised, but I'd like us to give some priority to the letting standards, because I think they're slipping, or have slipped a long way from what they used to be. So we need to get a grip.
Let's make clear for everybody listening or watching what we mean by letting standards here.
That's the quality of the property that we allow a tenant to move into.
Or the
So it's
vacant
a
property.
precondition.
Yeah. Can we pick that up, Mr. Knight?
Yeah, that's fine, because what we can do is we can bring to the committee what is the standard, how we then ensure we comply with the standard and our performance against standards. So that's an action we can take away and bring a report back for scrutiny on the performance in that area.
Councillor.
Can I just say on that, the lettable standards, the words aren't bad. It's the actual implementation of them, what inspection we do pre-inspection to make sure we're achieving the standard before we let.
It would be helpful, I think you and I have talked about this. You've got some specific examples that you've passed them to Mr. Knight, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say, first of all, I think it's an important area for the committee to scrutinise because it's part of the sort of tenant offer from the council. I think it's important to obviously clearly look at assurance, as you've highlighted, but also ensure that the standard is still to what you'd expect it to be. And what I would also encourage any member to do, if they do come across examples where things are not to the standard you expect, please ensure that they are referred to the council's complaints department so it can be logged and investigated as per policy. That's really important for us as well. Thanks.
I think that's a good point to remind members, to remind all our colleagues that we've got to use the complaint system now, rather than just dropping a note to whichever officer, that we're supposed to go through the complaint system. And can we reinforce that message to our colleagues? Councillor Murrows, and I apologise, Councillor Davis, I forgot to mention that as leader of the council you're here, so my apologies for that. If the two of you in the Cabinet could also take that back to Councillor Adkins, please, so that she can follow up on that. Councillor Dixon.
I just wonder, probably as part of the same item, whether we can look at the communications to tenants as well as part of the standards and what information they're getting.
That sounds a broader topic than just letting standards to me. You mean communications in general or communications specifically around allocations or?
I think specifically, I think it was mentioned some time ago about the communications with new tenants into properties and having the information, sort of safety information, all the information that they need. Seems to be
A sort of new tenant starter pack.
Yeah.
You're talking about really. That sort of thing. So can we pick that up then, please?
Yeah, I think there's a clear link there between when you sign a tenant to the information you give them linked to the letting of the property. So I think you could probably wrap that up together. Yeah. And I think that's a really important point. I think how you manage expectations with potential tenants, how they understand their obligations around the property they take on, I think it's really important to do that. So actually I think that'd be quite a good sort of discussion topic as well. And I also think potentially linking to the other point made, was there any link to the report regarding lettings, the number of complaints you've had around it as well might be helpful for the committee to understand as part of that deep dive.
I think we have a wider topic about communications with tenants anyway, just in general. Sorry, Councillor Bird. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Stanford Gardens that's been brought to my attention. There's been scaffolding up outside for 7 months and nothing happening with it other than it being stored. And the tenants didn't know much about it and were a bit annoyed. I believe that's been taken down, but the latest event, our contractors drilling holes in the structure internally and no one's told the tenants what on earth is going on. So
I think this is what I was referring to about a wider communication policy.
It is.
Yeah. And that's just one example which has been raised with me by a couple of councillors now. I don't know if you're specifically aware of Stanford Gardens and the issues there.
Yeah, I think I've had direct examples from Councillor Bode, which we've now got in the system being reviewed as part of complaints. I'd also say as well that the number of complaints being recorded is going up, and that is a good thing, because what it means is we're making it easier for tenants to complain. We're also ensuring our response times are improving, the quality of complaint investigations is improving as well. But we still need more. We've got more work to do in that area as well. So, and I think that's one of the areas you would have remembered from the regulatory submission, we're not capturing enough complaints. And so for us, the direction of travel is improving, but we're not quite where we need to be yet, though.
Councillor Fell.
Yeah, residents do have concerns, new residents. You know, they've been offered a place they've waited a long time for, and it's not up to the standard they think it should be. And I've had a few recently who, or we're not frightened to say we're not happy, but they're not happy. You know, I had one where there was water dripping from one flat into a new flat where a new baby was going in. And, yeah, it was reported and dealt with. It was a formal complaint. But I think we have to reassure new tenants, you know, who have been waiting a long time, who are desperate for a council property, that even though they're desperate, they still need to actually say, this isn't right, you know, there's something needs doing here. They shouldn't have to think they've just got to accept anything, because they don't have to accept anything. So I think that's an important message. Yes, we're offering you this property. This is the standard that we expect. This is what we do. This is what you have to do. And then take it from there if they really feel there's, you know, it's not the standard they think it should be. But I don't think some are nervous about saying, I don't want this property because there's this and this wrong with it. Will they then be told, okay, you're not going to take it, you're not going to get another one because you've turned one down. So we've got to be very careful with this, I think.
Mr Knight.
Yeah, I think Councillor Phelps just also reminded me of it. I suppose another point really the committee may want to get a briefing on is if we go back to the regulatory situation we found ourselves in over a year ago, we did do that sort of reflections in terms of how do we get to that point. And one of those challenges was around how we were structured in terms of how we set up our asset management function. So one of the things we may be able to brief on later on this year is our plans for how we're going to improve the asset management structure to strengthen it in a number of areas. I think that'll probably be something of interest to the committee because it does link to some of the points that you've raised as well. And Phil, who's here tonight, part of his role, he was brought in to do that very much, that piece of work. So that's currently going through review at the moment, internal review at the moment. But I think that's definitely an area of work where you'll probably need to be briefed on that and have a chance to give your reflection back. But I think it will assure you, when you do see it, that as part of not just improving processes and how we respond to things, but also the skills and the additional resources we need to strengthen that area of work. So that is also coming as well.
But I do think there's a degree of underlying concern from what Councillor Phelps says there about tenants being very nervous about sticking their hand on and saying this isn't right. So the question is, how do we make tenants comfortable if they're, let's say, shy retiring, to actually put their hand up and say this needs fixing?
The first thing I'd probably, if they are concerned and don't have the confidence to do that, I probably would suggest they contact Councillor Phelps. Not for every ward, I just add that one in, but for any of their local ward councillors, because you've got a unique role where you know the officers within the council, you know how to access the complaints procedure, and you can give that tenant the assurance and support they may need to access it. What I will say is we do want tenants to complain if they're not satisfied with the level of service they're receiving, and we are working really hard to ensure we do good investigations, try and resolve things efficiently and promptly for them, and make sure we do that in a timely way. And we've seen from some of our complaints performance real improvements in this area, but still more work to do.
Yeah, and I think we need to give them a clear, easy signpost route. Maybe coming to their local district council, but they probably won't know who that is if they move into a new area. We need to make it much easier than it seems to be at the moment. Councillor Bird.
We make it much easier by sticking to the standard inspecting and making sure the property is to that standard. And you
That
won't
is a
have
good point.
You won't have the reasonable complaints. You'll get unreasonable ones, I know that.
Yeah. Councillor Jones.
Have we as a district council gone to the residents living in our council homes and told them we would like you to use this complaints, procedure? Have we emailed them or have we delivered them letters to encourage them to do so?
Yeah, we've got a number of ways we do. We've got residents newsletter. We've got a resident involvement group. Hopefully if you Google complaints at Warwick, it should come up quite sort of easily as well. But there's more awareness we still need to do. So as part of that, one of the we're looking to raise awareness is obviously through local councillors, and as we're building up our customer data and customer contact information, we should be able to do more outbound work as well. And to support this work, we hopefully have secured a new tenant for our internal compliance board as well, and hopefully they will be joining us imminently as well. But there's more work to do there, and I think complaints may be an area where you may want to do more of a deep dive to answer some of those questions and have assurance that all the actions being taken are being taken to address this area as well.
We've got on the 22nd of July, the next meeting, a resident engagement strategy report that's coming to us. So will that include this deep dive into communications, etc.? Because that's critical.
Yeah, because I think if you want to increase the level of tenant and leaseholder engagement in terms of consultation and involvement, we have to be able to communicate with them in order to get the message across. So I think for me they're linked. But I think the point Councillor Jones makes is a good challenge, and we need to make sure that we come back with a more, we can bring forward the action plan around this work to give you assurance that more steps are being taken. But if you've got things you think we're not doing, then let us know, we'll definitely act on them.
So I think while it says resident engagement strategy, I think we need to make it a slightly wider engagement and communication strategy. Mr. Smith, your name's against this. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, Chair. I think we can incorporate what methods of communication we're using with the residents to get feedback, for them to understand what we do in terms of the different policies and complaints. So yeah, we can incorporate something around communication.
I know this has been a challenge for years, so I think we really need to fully understand what's going on. So, Mr. Knight.
Just one more thing that we've also done is that where tenants have contacted contractors to complain, the contractor will then try and deal with the issue. What we've said to all the contractors, which I think Paul's led on, is that if tenants come to complain, that must come back to us. We must know that information first, so we can make sure it's tracked, logged, and then we can learn from it. So that work is already going on now with contractors to ensure that they make sure they don't just deal with the issue, but we've got the sight of it and we can see what's going on. And that's also part of the change in sort of culture and process we're trying to put in place in the organisation.
Okay. So summarising this, just looking at the... Oh, Mr. Councillor Jones.
Sorry, just to follow up then, it sounds to me then, based on your answer, that we are quite good at making routes available to residents if they are so proactive as to want to engage with them, like the residents' newsletter, but we don't actually go out necessarily to tell them that we are looking for your complaints. And perhaps that's maybe where the communication strategy needs a bit of development then.
We're reactive rather than proactive is what's... Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do as well, I think what we part of the sort of looking at the sort of new sort of housing structure is we also want to reduce the patch sizes for housing officers. So at the moment, each housing officer is carrying a higher number of properties to look after. So what we want to be able to do with the new housing structure is reduce the number of properties they're responsible for, so to give them more time as well. So what hopefully you'll see later on this year when that comes through to you to have a look at is we're reducing the patch sizes basically. So each housing officer should have more time to dedicate to the patch they look after, more time to support those more vulnerable tenants who may need more of that sort of hand-holding interaction to support them, that may not be able to proactively necessarily raise a complaint or raise issues, and do more of that outbound work. Linked to that, also we've got more work to do on how we use technology to be more outbound as well. So one area of work within Paul's team is the implementation of housing CRM. We've got the product. We're looking to change the way how we deliver customer service in housing, so we make better use of the contacts coming into us and going out. So that's the other element, how we increase the amount of tenant data we hold and household information as well. So yeah, some good challenges there. Thanks.
If I could add to the challenge, do we have different methods available for those who may not be as internet literate as others?
Yes, if you want to complain, you can phone up, you can write in, you can email in. I think there's an online form. You can go to your councillor. So and our complaints policy is compliant with the Housing Ombudsman Code as well. But there's always more you can do.
Councillor Collins.
I'm just going to make a really quick challenge to the online form. I've just tried to do it while you've been chatting. It's a bit of a pain. It's not immediately obvious after Googling Warwick complaints where you put a housing complaint. You've actually hidden it under all other under submit a different form, which is a different section to reporting a problem. And if you were to search housing, you might get a bit confused because you've got stuff about the housing ombudsman on there, which isn't actually immediately relevant, but if you're looking for housing, you might end up there. So someone needs to review that page, as it's quite unclear at the moment in general.
Thank you. That's a perfect example there. So I think definitely we'll take as an action, Josie, we can, for the team to improve the user experience of that webpage. Thank you.
Yes, I think communication is definitely one of those items we want to do a deep dive on. I don't think we've got any comfort or assurance on that at the moment, but we are.
I think the other bit as well, just touching on this, is what you'll find with many social landlords is they will do a lot more resident engagement and involvement. So where that's an area where we need to, I think, mature as an organisation. So when I was working for a housing association, we had tenant inspectors, we had a tenant technology group who were working with us, testing different sort of like forms or helping us policy development group with tenants. So there's a more we think we need to be doing regarding how we involve tenants in decision making, check and challenge, and how we formulate processes and things. So that's the bit where we're looking to bring forward that area of work as well over the coming sort of months and years, because that is also critical.
So it sounds like the wheel's been invented. So we're not reinventing the wheel?
I think things can change over time, and I think tenants bring that first-hand insight in terms of how they receive services, and they will spot things we may necessarily won't spot because we're not always users of the service. And I think there's huge value added in strengthening their resident engagement in Scrutiny. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on the work programme? Because at the moment we've got the resident engagement strategy, which we're going to widen to include communication specifically. Next time, Penningtons are presenting the report findings. I assume that's timed so that Latrice Thomas is able to join us on that one. We've got the standalone compliance programme, HRA budget update, procurement of the repair maintenance contract, which is on this evening as well. Members, anything else? That's quite a full agenda already you want to see on the next meeting?
Just wanted to sort of, for those councillors that are new to the committee, Pennington's Choices was the report that we had back in November 23 that instigated the self-referral to the regulator. So Latrice was the consultant who led that work and has advised us on that journey of improvement since. She did a midpoint review last year, and I think the committee, all members had a copy of that report at the time. That showed we were broadly on track, but with some areas still to do. Latrice is currently working on what we call the endpoint review, and that report is due next week. I'm looking at Jen. Yep, getting a nod there. Yep, due next week. And then once that gets reviewed, that will come to the committee for review, and you'll get the chance to question Latrice on her and give you that independent view of our progress.
We're scheduling it for the next time, for about 8 weeks' time. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, and that report will also get shared with the regulator as well.
Just one other point on the specification of the roof replacement. I'm just trying to understand that it's not procuring this through a framework, so we don't need to follow that up. Or is that what the comment on this report says here? Specifically says ONS recommended that the Housing Scrutiny Committee look at the specs for roof replacement, but Ms Barker explained that housing are not developing a spec but procuring through a framework.
Can I come back in
Yes, rather than tick. I'm assuming that is not going to be something that we will look at, but can we confirm that and you can come back to me directly? Thank you. All right, members, any other comments on item 6? So this report is only to note, so we don't need a vote. Are you happy, members, to note the report? Yeah, I think everybody, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, members. Item 7, update from the portfolio holder of housing. As I said earlier on, Councillor Adkins is unfortunately absent tonight and Councillor Melrose is standing in for her. This is it's an update regarding the meeting of the regulator on April the 25th. I should draw members' attention as well, as we'll come to it under item 8. There's some comments from the regulator in item 8. I think it's on page 4, which I no doubt that Councillor Melrose will also address. So if I can pass over to you, Councillor Melrose, for updating on the regulator.
Thank you, Chair. Officers and Councillor Atkins had a face-to-face meeting with the regulators on April 25th, 2025. This meeting was joined by Jonathan Driscoll, who is the Assistant Director of Regulatory Engagement. The reflection on behalf of the regulator is that Warwick District Councils has indeed identified the challenges, have been constructive and willing in the approach, and they liked the fact that a review had been undertaken in April and that positive changes were being made. However, they were expressed concern that the pace of improvement and reporting assurance was too slow. There were still gaps in information being reported, and though they appreciate the governance as a work in progress, they are not able to see where there's been any escalations of issue and decision making. They also took the opportunity to advise that there have been alternative methods at the disposal to ensure improvements. Following them commentary, Councillor Atkins, Darren Knight and Lisa Barker explained some of the rationales. So, for example, Warwick District Council have been trying to work at pace, but also fully to address the root cause issues and to ensure improvements are sustained and embedded. The regulator became more assured of the trajectory and the future pace, but would keep things under review. Following that meeting, Councillor Atkins and Darren Knight briefed myself and Councillor Davison, and we are being kept briefed on any further regulatory meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Melrose. Any members, any comments specifically on this item? Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Yes, on 2.4, which are the reflections on the engagement that we had, and 3 comments. But there's one that I take as a sort of threat to let you know it is there, and that's that the RSH advised that they do have alternative methods at their disposal to ensure improvements in the form of deployment of an investigation and enforcement team to work with WDC. So they didn't need to say that, but they have said it, and that concerns me that we need to be watching what we're doing and to accelerate.
Mr. Knight.
Yeah, I think there's a number of reflections I think to make. I think the first one I'd say is that I think, as members know, we've been very transparent and open with the regulator since November 23. I think we can be proud of the fact that we've done that and why we did that. And I think we proactively identified areas for improvement and let them know. And so I think that's something we can be proud of. I think there is a challenge there's a number of challenges regarding pace of delivery versus ensuring what you do is sustainable. And that is a really difficult balancing act. So that's the conversations we have with the regulator around it. So, and I think one of the things we've reflected back was some clarifications over timelines, which we have done, because some of the journey did start in November 23, but some of the journey didn't start till last year. So I think there are some clarifications we did provide with them regarding some of the points they raised. I think the scale of the challenge is big, and we can't underestimate that. And you've seen by the amount of information you've been presented with the amount of work that has been going on. But we welcome and we welcome the regulatory environment we all work within, because it puts housing high up the agenda. They provide very, very good check-in challenge to us as well, and we've learned a lot from them. There are a couple of areas where I think we need to further mature and improve, and I think that picked up on some of Jonathan's feedback. So, for example, in July Cabinet now, there will be a new assurance framework going to Cabinet for approval. That has been based on a C1 landlord. That's a top rating landlord that we've learnt from. We've got a new KPI performance indicator framework going to Cabinet in July as well. That will make it easier for all members to be able to, with a RAG status, look at performance by month, trend, by colour code, by every indicator within the housing department, so whether that's sort of customer compliance operations. We've also, as part of that, that will bring together lots of performance reporting that has been in sort of separate places. And we've also looking to take forward our sort of housing structure. That's really important, and it was important that we did not rush that. And that is also now coming forward. So I think it's constructive checking challenge we've had from them. They do have further regulatory powers, and they in their role they have to be robust as well in challenging, because that's what we'd expect them to do. And we've got to be preparing more information for them for our next sort of June meeting with them. And that dialogue will continue. We've also reviewed all the risks around this as well, and that will also be coming to Cabinet in July. There are some practical challenges though. So if you take specialist called asset professionals, they are difficult to come by. You know, so that is a recruitment in key areas is difficult for us at the moment. So we are going to agency on some roles in order to ensure we get the right capacity in the organisation. We try and recruit first, but if we can't do that, we've got to go to agency in order to address it, to maintain momentum and pace. So it is a, and then alongside that, I think it's the other point we also highlighted to the regulator is that we've got to maintain business as usual. We can't take our eye off that. We've got to deliver the Consumer Standards Action Plan with rigour, pace as well. We've also, later on the agenda, we've got the re-procurement of the repairs and maintenance contract. That's the most important service to tenants. That has to be mobilised by April 26. We cannot not hit that deadline. Now, ideally, we wouldn't want to have done that all at the same time. But because of circumstance, we've got to manage that huge programme of work as well as those other elements. And that's the sort of dialogue we're having with the regulator to say, yeah, we've got a mountain to climb, we are climbing it, we're trying to get quicker, but we've also got we cannot drop any of the plates we're keeping spinning as well. So I think that's what we're going through. The final bit to it as well, I think one of the things we've learned is the importance of independent validation. So we've mentioned Pennington Choices coming in, where they're in at the moment, doing their endpoint review of the asset compliance side of things. So hopefully that'll come through, demonstrating the progress we have made. And then in November, we've got HQN coming back to do a 12-month review of our progress as well. Again, another independent check. That'll be shared with the regulator, and that'll be shared with yourselves as well. So, and you'll have the chance as a committee to hear from Damien from HQN as well. So we're trying to build that rigour in. Linked to that, we've all set this committee up. So if this committee came into effect in October, but this committee will take time to get to grips with the housing regulatory environment, get to grips with the HRA, and develop its knowledge in order to further develop scrutiny. And that's the same for Cabinet as well. They're on the journey with this as well. And I think the things I'd ask all members to reflect on is around assurance. So how are you assured that things are moving in the right direction? How is that assurance validated? And if things are not being done, what assurance are you getting that they are, when are they going to be done? And I think that's some of the questions in checks and challenges, and that's what we've got mature our reporting. So it's making sure that we don't overload you with information, but we're giving you the right information in order to take your role. And that's something we've still not quite got right yet. And we're hoping with the new reporting in July, you'll see an improvement moving forward from then. And that information will also be shared with the regulator as well. Sorry, that's a bit of a long-winded answer there, Councillor Bode.
Councillor Davidson, you want to add a comment?
A very much quicker answer, Councillor Bode. The phrasing by the regulator about further action, I think, was in the initial letter. I've certainly seen it before. They always reserve that right.
Do we have an idea of when the regulator is next going to assess us in terms of C1, 2, 3, 4? And are there any specific metrics or areas where the regulator has asked us that we're falling, or pointed out that we're falling short in these conversations?
Yeah, I think at the moment, we meet with the regulator on a monthly basis, so we do that, and then we meet with them on a quarterly basis, or face-to-face. So that's ongoing, and that will maintain. Where we want to get to is a point where we are assured internally that we think we are compliant, and then what we'll then do is make sure that's independently signed off and reviewed first, and then we'll engage the regulator. But we're not there yet, so I think there's a bit of time. And in terms of where the regulator is sort of, I suppose, re-emphasise their concerns really is around that. I think he's got highlighted the internal assurance area, getting that strengthened. The governance is improving. We've got our own compliance board, but there's more work to do there. And also making sure that we've got better understanding of their data, how we're using the data to make sure that those areas of progress are being maintained. So a bit of a long answer again there.
So there's no one specific area where the regulator has expressed extreme concern. It's more general.
It's concerns in terms of the sort of, I suppose, the escalation, I think has got mentioned, decision making or of issues. Yeah. The performance information and the internal assurance is important. I think one of the reflections back was around the pace of structural change. And I think what we've done there is, I think if members go back to budget setting, we recognise we needed to, it wasn't just restructuring the housing department, we had to realign all the senior leadership team portfolios first to create the capacity in housing to take on asset management and move services out of housing elsewhere in the organisation. That took around 4 months. That was done quickly in terms of the scale of what we needed to do. And then from that, then we've worked on a new operating model for housing and a structure. That, for me, has been done in a logical way. And I think, actually, with the right degree of pace behind it. And that's why that's why the dialogue with the regulators is really important, to make sure there's that clarity of understanding on both sides.
Any other comments, members, to the discussions with the regulators? I don't think we're even noting that report, are we? No. So, thank you, Councillor Melrose, for standing in for Councillor Adkins. With that, we'll move on to, I think, the meat of the discussion today. Compliance plan, progress and review of the risk register. So that's item 8. Who's going to lead on this? Mr. Smith?
Yes, Chair, if I may, I'll just brief introduction to the report. The report updates on progress against the Consumer Standards Improvement Plan. 108 action items in the plan, a total of 66 are currently underway or have been completed. Appendix 3 in the report sets out a new management report being used to report on compliance remedial actions against certain measures. And the purpose of this report is to try and get the data into one document, and so it's a lot better to sort of analyse, use and capture all the data that we've got. We are, Mr. Knight mentioned that we are also looking at a wider KPI report as well, which will overlay that. At section 1.7, there's a table showing the revisions to date in the improvement plan, and the updated risk register is at appendix 6. But again, Mr Knight explained that we've got a further review that's been undertaken on that risk register, and particularly looking at the mitigation assessments scores and looking to revisit because we have had feedback and challenge from the board that they are too low. So we have undertaken quite a robust review of that risk register, and that will be reported at a future committee meeting. So the recommendations, Chair, that the committee notes the progress made since the last meeting, and that the committee notes the changes to delivery dates of the actions listed in the table. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Jones.
Last time we had a meeting, we saw a document, well, this document, and in this same section there were 4 dates, now there are 6. And I think I asked at the time, does the Housing Department have capacity to ensure that there will not be any more deferrals? And I think the answer I got was yes. So that seems to have gone wrong somewhere. Can we get an explanation for those changes, please?
Mr Smith, Ms Morris.
With any project, there's always a little bit of movement. I believe at the end of that last meeting, we decided that we would go away and we would then look at the following 2 quarters, because though there is the whole action plan, the dates were so far out. So some of these were, right, where are we? We sat down, we reviewed them with the leads on the actions, and they needed just that little bit of extra time. So what we're doing going forwards is looking at kind of 2 quarters at a time. So it's much more focused rather than far-reaching. It gives the team that path forward, and it gives them the ability as well to say, actually, this isn't going to work for whatever the reason is, and that's why we've put the explanations in.
And the other thing we've also introduced to strengthen our internal governance is that where moving forward, if more time is needed, we're going to formalise the change management process as well. So if a manager needs an extension of time, fine, that can happen. They will fill in a change request, an extension request. They'll set out formally why that's needed, what assurance will they give to ensure that revised deadline will be hit, and then that extension will be agreed by myself or the head of housing before it goes to the compliance committee, compliance board for check and challenge. So that's a bit of, again, further reflection we've learned in terms of tightening that element up. And the bit around focusing on 2 quarters, I think that was, I'm going to put my reputation on the line. I think that was a recommendation either from myself or Councillor Bode. I suspect it was from Councillor Bode. I think he may have mentioned that one before at a previous meeting. So and that's also where we've made a slight change based on the feedback you've given.
Councillor Jones, are you comfortable with that, or what follow-up questions?
That's fine, thank you.
And I think I sort of highlighted earlier on as well that there are pressure points regarding resourcing in some areas as well. So, for example, we've recruited a lot of the staff from the interim resourcing plan. I think the majority of those are now appointed or being onboarded as we speak. But there are some roles, for example, we're still struggling. We've gone to agency, but I think the number of people coming into the organisation of housing is now increasing, and with the number of people, starters, being onboarded.
Councillor Fowler.
I'm not sure if this is the right place to raise it, but I've got to go in a minute, so I'll raise it anyway. Housing condition survey, which, as far as I knew, was going to be available January, February, and we're now nearly in June. I asked particularly if I could see the sort of condition of houses, council property in Whitnash. Are we going to get it? Are we going to get the whole report? Are we going to get it in, in a...
So when will it be completed?
When will it be completed? Or when will we see it? I think it's been completed. I don't think it's actually been analysed and information shared with us.
I think just before I bring Phil in to give the answer on that as our asset lead, This is also actually an area of concern highlighted by the regulator in terms of the pace of delivery of the stock condition. Now, we are, from memory, about 75% done. We've got another 25% to go. And we've also got to do some validation work regarding the data we've had through. We are looking to bring stock condition back in-house. So we're currently looking at the moment we've got, I think, hopefully interviews lined up this week or next week, Phil, in terms of bringing stock condition back in-house. But I think I'll pass over to Phil now in terms of, because that links to decent homes as well, Councillor Phelps, because we need to report our decent home position as well. But I'll bring Phil in now to give you the more detailed answer.
Before that, can you define the word done? What you mean when 75% has been done? What is done?
So I'll leave that to Phil, my technical expert, to give that. But my understanding, 75% is that 75% have been surveyed. But we've got 25% left, but then you do have to do some validation work based on the data you're getting through. But I'll hand over to Phil to give you the technical answer.
Yes, hello everybody. In terms of the, I'll take the validation work first. The report that we've had from the stock condition surveyors is that there were, in their view, there were 200 properties of the 75% of the stock they surveyed that, in their view, didn't comply with the decent homes standard. And what we've done is we've also looked at those records, and we've looked at our own records and our own records on our own systems, and we felt that we needed to check that, to validate that, to validate those outcomes. And what we found is we've been out and looked at 27 properties, and of those 27 properties, around about a third we agreed they didn't meet the decent home standard. But the other 2/3, we felt that they did meet the standard, and although they may require some planned work in the next 5 years, for example, they didn't actually fail the decent home standard at this time. And the other thing with those 200 properties, around 45 were housing health and safety rating failures. We've cleared those failures down. So we've got around about 140 properties now that we want to go out and have a look at. And we've got someone who's recently returned from sick leave dedicated to go out and survey those properties. And they're around about a quarter of a way through that. Again, the results are coming back that they don't necessarily agree that they fell the decent home standard. So within around 6 weeks, that programme of validation surveys should be finished. Moving to the stock condition survey,
Can I ask you?
If you want any questions on
on about you're saying the decent. You're disagreeing with the independent inspections that they fail the non-decent. What's it? The decent standards.
Decent homes is subject to interpretation. Sorry, so there's an interpretation. And an example might be an external door that might be past a life cycle date, but they themselves have suggested that it's in good condition. Our interpretation of decent homes is, even though something might be older, if it's in good condition, it doesn't need repair, then that doesn't constitute a decent homes failure.
Have you cycled back with the surveyors to have that discussion with them on each of these?
We will have those discussions. We're collating that information at the moment, so we will have those discussions with Penningtons.
So that you will reach agreement, the two teams will reach agreement on what is and isn't, which houses do and which houses don't meet decent.
Yes,
standards?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you will do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you go on to the stock condition
Yes,
service.
yeah. And then, and then in terms of the, the 25%, which is around about 1,500 properties, we are recruiting. It's been agreed that we'll have 3 stock condition surveyors. We'll bring that in-house. That will then give us control over the surveying that we're doing. And we're currently going through the process of appointing those surveyors. And then there'll be around about a 3-month programme of those surveyors going out, carrying out the surveys in order to complete the programme of surveys.
So will we be able to...
Just sort of mention the 25% that they were particularly difficult to access for the consultants carrying out the surveys. So one of the reasons by having our own teams doing this work is it gives us the flexibility and the ability to not make appointments, but also knock on the doors and make appointments on site with residents. So they're not going to be controlled purely by letters and appointments. So discussions with some other local authorities where that's very much how they found they needed to get access to carry out the surveys.
So would you like to put a date on when the stock condition survey will be completed by? I heard 3 months in there.
Sorry?
I heard 3 months in the answer. But
3 months.
We're talking...
We're hoping to bring the surveyors in over the next sort of month. So I think, September, access is going to be an issue, obviously, getting access to do that. But I very much hope that September into October, we should be in a position where we are wrapping up the surveys.
If members agree, I'd like to suggest to the housing officers that we put this on the agenda for, I think it's September the meeting, as a deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
You may not have 100%, I think it's 17th September. You may not have 100% by then, you might have 90-something% by then, but I think this has been dragging on. I think we need to take a look at it in whatever state it is. Mm-hmm. So that gives you 3.5 months from where we are now. Is that okay with you? Mm-hmm. 17th September, deep dive into stock condition.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
You okay with that? Before I bring it, I've got...
Yeah, I think just to build on this, I think just to highlight this, this was one of the areas of concern from regulators about the pace of completing stock condition surveys. And I think by bringing it back in-house will give us that more flexibility that we've not had. And it's also the maintaining stock condition as well. So not just doing the 25%, it's also the maintaining it moving forward, because the reason this is important is because it informs our capital programme improvements as well. The doors, the bathrooms, the windows, the kitchens, etc.
And I think we want to understand whatever the status is, even if it's only still 75%, we should understand in September what is happening.
And the assurance around it.
And the assurance around it, absolutely. Now, Councillor Collins, I see you first.
I think so, but I would be changing the subject. I'm just wondering if there's any other...
Councillor Dixon, are you on the same subject? You are.
I'm just wondering where in the process of doing the surveying, almost the work orders are set up. Are we going to have to wait for all the surveys to be done and all the items identified before we then start on the first one of the repairs, the work to be done? Or are these things running concurrently? Because, for our residents.
No, I think one of the advantages of bringing the work in-house is we can get very regular updates from the surveyors as to any work that is required. unless they find any urgent work that's required, then when we can programme that work urgently. If they identify planned work, we can start to build that into the plan programme. So that will be an ongoing thing. But I think with the previous survey, I think we had a monthly updates from the consultants. Bring it in-house, we can get weekly updates from the team, and they will then be able to provide the information to allow us to plan the works.
Councillor Jones, your questions on the stock condition survey? Yeah.
I mean, the next regulator meeting, am I right in saying that's going to be in July, based on the quarterly update? June?
The next meeting is in June, and then we have monthly meetings and a quarterly face-to-face.
Okay, so are the regulators, can we expect them to be satisfied if we take as long as September or October to reach an agreement with the surveyors and carry out any remedial works that we do agree are necessary? Are they going to be satisfied with that timeline?
I'm not sure it's just the regulator. I think it's we as committee also need to be satisfied.
Well, I think
because
I'm
it is
satisfied.
dragging on.
So long as the regulator's satisfied, I'm satisfied, I think.
I think this goes to perhaps another the issue really. I think this is why you've got a stronger regulatory regime, is to ensure organisations are providing that check, get to that point where they're providing that stronger check-in challenge. So for me, it's members, it's important that, are you assured from what you hear that there is a plan and grip in place to resolve it, and what the plan and how confident you are on the plan delivering that. So the regulator wants to see that check and challenge, which you're doing. We will be providing a factual position statement for the regulator in terms of where we've got to, a timeline for resolution and the rationale behind that, which they can then provide their check and challenge. But critically important is that ultimately yourself assuring you that based on what you've heard, you've got confidence in the plan to deliver as well. And I think that's where I'd always go back to.
At the moment, I don't think we have sufficient confidence in the timing of the plan. That's why I want to look at it in deep dive later on.
Yeah, and I think that's because I think we got quite a big way with it, and then the last 20 days struggled to get that final bit through. I think once we get the stock condition surveyors in, that'll make a difference. But I think you're right, a deep dive next time. I think Paul's got his hand up as well.
I will ask the question with Councillor Davison present here. Have you got enough resources for this?
I think we've got, if you go back to the budget setting, we agreed under £1 million worth of staffing growth. We've got a whole range of people who've started joining the organisation. So, for example, we've now got dedicated complaints officers in place. We've got, we've just appointed our fire safety lead, who's came in as well. We've, as Phil said, we've got interviews lined up, or hopefully lining up for stock condition surveyors. So I think we've got a lot of people coming in, but there are challenges in technical areas, and it takes time to onboard people as well. And I think that's also one of the practical realities of the scale of change we're doing. So I think what we've been very supportive. We've had very support from the administration in terms of resourcing and the need to get this right. So I'm comfortable where we're at, but we need to do it in a managed way as well.
Totally accept have to do it in a managed way, but I think if you are going to be struggling for resources, then I certainly like the Cabinet to understand that and take a view on that. Councillor Davison, you want to comment?
Yes, Darren Knight's already said it really, but when you do structural change, so bringing in-house, you can't say the next day, is it working? So I think the question for Cabinet and for this committee is, when is it reasonable to form a view on whether bringing in-house has worked? Because to begin with, obviously, you have to appoint, they have to settle down. When can you start making a judgment? So I think it's more there rather than let's throw more resources at it.
I think that's why we do a checkpoint in 2 meetings' time on whatever it was of September, 17th September. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Chair. I know Phil mentioned October, but within the improvement plan, we have said the end of December, and that's for all the the preparatory work, recruiting the surveyors, doing the inspection, validating, getting that data onto the system, being able to analyse. So effectively 31st of December is a more realistic date to deliver this to the satisfaction of the requirements. But I do take your point, Chair, that a midpoint review September would be helpful in that process.
I think it would be lovely if we had 100%. You're flagging to me we're not getting 100% in September. But let's please have that review, so if we understand if it's 72 or 78% as against 90%, we understand what the issues are as a committee, and can review the progress to that December deadline.
We could do a midpoint there, and the 27th of January is the next date after.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's see where we are in September. So what I'm not asking for is a massive report. I'm asking for a status update, a list of the challenges and anything else you need to get that done, and any roadblocks, and what help we or the Cabinet can do to remove those roadblocks. Any other points on stock condition surveys or... so then is that on Councillor Jones on stock condition?
Yeah, I mean, the RSH's comments saying that they can't see where there's complete oversight and they can't see where there's escalation of issues and decision making, it does concern me. Are the regulators expecting a December deadline by that for the stock condition surveys to complete? And knowing that, have they written that response to us, telling us that we're not scrutinising and accelerating things quick enough?
I'll probably answer the first bit, if that's okay. So I think within the pack of information you've got to address the regulators' debate, decision making and oversight, there is a draft assurance framework. So part of demonstrating how we strengthen that is that new assurance framework. So that's been shared with the regulator as well, and we'll look to test how that works over the coming months. So, and also your feedback as part of that will be sort of really important. So what was the second part of your question, Councillor Jones?
My question was whether or not the comment they've made, part C of their response, saying that they can't see where the escalation of issues or decision making is coming from this committee, I presume that means. Have they made that comment with the expectation of a December, deadline for this stock survey to complete?
Yeah, with that on the start, I'll get one of the teams just to clarify regarding expectations of the stock condition. But in terms of the assurance framework, that's designed to strengthen across the board. But I'll ask one of the teams just to clarify the regulator's expectation regarding stock condition.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on stock condition? Mr. Smith.
Yes, Chair. The regulators' requirements will be that we have 100% stock condition survey, and therefore that we know and understand what level of decent homes our properties have. They clearly do accept that may take time, and they understand the position that we're in and we're recruiting and we're bringing in-house. So I think their approach now is that they will monitor, and this December the 31st deadline will be critical that we hit that now, and we will want to keep them posted actual where that progress is so they can see that timeline trajectory and that we are increasing the numbers. But they will say to us, it's up to us, when we do them, but they will want to see that movement and those completed inspections.
Tonight.
Yeah, and I think the point there, the other bit we want to make sure we get right, Councillor Jones, really is on any KPI performance reporting report. We won't be able to be that. Members should be able to look at that and within 30 seconds find any indicator and see if it's red or green or amber and it's on track. And if it's not on track, why not? So what we want to be able to say is percentage stock condition, X% amber. What are we doing about it? When is it going to be done by? And then we don't have necessarily at the moment the level of maturity of reporting. in the way we'd like to give members that assurance and the ease of ability to scrutinise that data. And I think what we've produced in draft, which will go to Cabinet in July, is based on Housemarque's performance reporting. So we think you'll like what we're going to be bringing forward, but obviously we'll get your feedback on it over the coming months. And that will hopefully begin to provide more data in a better way to easily scrutinise and track performance as well.
Can I just check timings here? Cabinet in July is when? 9th. So we will be able to see that draft on the, whenever it is, 22nd, I think it is, next.
We can send you the draft tomorrow. The
I think-
template anyway.
Okay. That would make more sense for us to at least comment as members of the Scrutiny Committee prior to it going to Cabinet. So if all members of the Housing Scrutiny Committee can receive a copy, and please add Councillor Falp, although she's not a full-time member, she's been involved in the discussions.
Yeah. We've literally just finished the draft, so yes,
Yep,
it's literally
okay.
hot off the press. Yep.
Thank you. Now, I think it was Councillor Dixon, half an hour ago, more or less. Or was it Councillor Collins? It was Councillor Collins, beg your pardon. Councillor Collins.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the SMART goals for quarter 2 2025. I think we touched on them previously, but I think it'd be worth going through them again. I'm curious as to why 8 of the revised dates are in the past and have no revised date after it. They range in finished progress from 89% to 0%. I'm particularly concerned about the lack of progress on promotion of available services to support tenants involved with or witnessing hate crimes.
So you're on page, I think everybody's trying to catch up with Councillor Collins. I think it's page 18 and 19 in the report. It's the multicoloured summary of the previous 10 pages. That's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. SMART goals. Appendix item.
Which officer wishes to take that question?
Sorry, Chair, we're just still just trying to find the entry.
Is that multicoloured report?
So in regards to hate crimes, there is a policy that is in the process of being developed. I'm pretty sure, actually. So they have developed a list of available support. We're looking at doing that and promoting that internally with staff and externally with tenants. And in the interim of getting it onto the website, there is also a leaflet that Landlord Services is in the process of completing, and it's with media at the moment to get that aspect completed. So it's all tied in to kind of one another, but it is advancing, and it's due, I believe, the current revised target date is the 20th of June for completion.
So we will have a third revision date then. Effectively, we've already got 2, I think, against that. If I'm reading... No, sorry, I'm not reading that correctly. No, that was the first revision date. As a general comment, Councillor Collins, yes.
I don't know, maybe I'm about to make the same comment, but if there is a revised date available for this, is there a reason that we are not being given it in this documentation?
Let me follow up with that because our comments were similar, let's say. And this is an issue, I know, with the timetable of when we produce reports, that we're here on the 27th of May. And these reports are dated simply because of the length of time it takes go through the process. He's dated at the end of April. Do we have an update to these reports available straight off? I think this is off Monday. So that's the name of the system for anybody. Look at Councillor Brown may not know what Monday is here, but it's not the day of the week, it is the name of the system. Somebody in our marketing team somewhere. Ms Morrison, do you want to comment?
So I think one of the issues that we're running into is that the timing of the meetings and the information that is given to all levels of governance is meant to be the same. So yes, there will, and it's moving projects. So there's updates all the time. There's weekly updates really. So that there has to be, and you'll notice it with all the reporting, even the management report, because that's showing you currently March data, because it's dated from the 1st of April. So there is going to be a lag. In all honesty, at this moment, we can give updates, but then we're creating other reports all the time. So
I don't want to get into a reporting update cycle and another 20-page report every half an hour. Is of no benefit to anybody. But we're running on information that's 4 weeks out of date. It's not doing the officers any, it's doing you a disservice to have the information that's out of date. I know we can't pull it straight off the system at, what is it, 7:20 on a Tuesday, but there must be a better way to address something like Councillor Collins' points about why that date's not there, but in general, how can we get more up-to-date reports so that we can actually scrutinise them properly? Because at the moment, we're running 4 weeks behind.
I mean, it's a simple export. Why can't we have it at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday?
Mr. Knight.
I think one of the things we may want to pick up offline is an action to take away is the fact that we need to make sure that the data we're sending around is consistent with the regulator, cabinet, compliance board, etc. But recognise that actually that some of the that it may be okay for us to potentially send you the papers as we normally would, but run a Monday report the Thursday before committee. So you'd get an updated position, and that would be a supplementary paper, an addendum that would follow. So it wouldn't fit in the normal publishing cycle, but as long as you're happy with that, then we could just ask Jen every Thursday, the week before committee, that we just run a Monday report and circulate it by email to you all or through committee services. And then you've got that report straight from the system. It's up to date. And for me, that's a pragmatic, it's not creating more work necessarily. It's just running a report. I'd say that Jen's agreement is not taking more work, that's fine. So I've not got myself into trouble.
It hasn't fallen off it.
No. And that way, then that's probably for me a straightforward fix if you're happy with that as a committee to work like that.
I think it's not a question of happy. I think we need to do that. So yeah, yes, please. Yeah. Because I think it's unfair to you guys and all the work you're doing that we're looking at something that is out of date and we're not beating you up exactly, but no, criticising something when in fact it may well be done.
Can I also just highlight as well, I think one of the things that I think the regulator did give us some credit as well is some of the project management approach we've taken. Because if you look on there, you've got actions by percentage completion as well. Not many organisations in their position would be able to do that as well. So I just want to highlight that one. Thanks.
I mean, just looking at the last on that one, review the performance reporting monitoring system, it says 0% not started, and it's due in 2 weeks' time. So this is the sort of thing. No, I can't make a comment on that because I suspect you're probably well down the road, but we're 4 weeks out of date. Okay, I think the point's been made. Ms Morrison, first of all, and then Councillor Jones.
Sorry, Councillor Jones. Can I just be clear? The report that you want is the RAG report with the dates from Monday, so you can see the current percentage as to where everything is with and any changes to dates.
The summary report, to my mind, is more than sufficient. I don't know if everybody, our fellow councillors, would agree with that. Councillor Collins.
I could see value in a few of the other reports. I think it depends on how many of the reports are a click button update and how many of the reports are a serious investment update.
And I would hope that the new reporting system may actually solve some of your problems, but we're not going to see that in live until July at the earliest. So
the KPI report will, because it will show you the trend performance by month, by quarter. So that will give you a feel for how KPI, POIs, things are trending anyway, so that should be, I think, okay. But with this report, I'm sure, as Jen's confirmed, we can run that. But Jen, maybe to clarify any of the points. Not.
The Monday report is pretty much click, and it exports it into Excel so you can get rid of the comments and all those questions. That's really easy. I would say the management report as it is, that's much more in-depth, but this would give you an overall, the Monday report would give you an up-to-date idea as to where everything stands based on that time lag.
Councillor Jones.
I don't know whether other councillors would agree, but perhaps it would be nice if there was a little indicator if the target due date was...
Sorry, perhaps it'd be nice if there was
a little indicator on that Monday report as to whether the target due date is earlier than the current date, just so we can have a very quick sense check that everything is indeed, well...
You mean by that you mean if it's missed its deadline?
Correct.
Rather than the other way around, yeah.
Correct, yes.
I don't know how flexible this Monday system is. Okay, well, Mr. Knight's just whispered in my ear, you'll take it away and see, you know, we know what you're asking for, and the officers will take it away. Members, other comments on the compliance plan progress? Councillor Gordon.
Going back to Councillor Collins' question about the hate crime action, has that got the same lead officer as a lot of the other EDI actions?
Mr. Smith, is it? Yes.
Yes, Chair. The lead for the policy, the EDI policy, was Sally Cowsall, who's left the organisation. So we had that bit of a sort of a gap, and we needed to reallocate the workload. So we did that. I've taken responsibility to drive the policy, and I'll be looking to delegate through, as it happens, probably my actual operating team to then deliver some of the other important aspects, which is going to be around data collection and then starting to analyse different policies to ensure that they're fair in terms of all the residents and their protected characteristics. So I understand where you're coming from, but I can reassure you that, you know, we'll get that momentum back for all those actions that are related to equality.
Councillor Gorman, anything to follow up on that?
Not on that question.
Other comments, councillors? Councillor Gorman again, yeah.
So I do have several questions. So are we currently meeting the legal and statutory requirements for our aids and adaptations policy? Because that is one of the aims of the new policy. So I'm wondering if we're currently meeting that.
And that went to Phil.
Mr. Dark.
Yeah, the aids and adaptation policy has been drafted, and it's gone to consultation for the resident improvement group for their comments. So that's the status of that at the moment.
So are we currently meeting our legal and statutory requirements in relation to aids and adaptations? Do we know?
I believe so. I believe so.
Could we have something a little bit more definitive, perhaps circulated afterwards?
Yeah. Sorry?
Could we have something a bit more definitive circulated afterwards, please, to members, rather than I believe that we are meeting them?
Yes.
Or we're not meeting them?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I will get that confirmation for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
then let's have all committee members have a copy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gorman.
Yes, so another item on the highlight report was review all elements of homes and communal areas to check they're being monitored for risks and mitigate such risks identified. What's the progress on that item?
Chair, in terms of any specific risk?
It was one of the items that was missing any notes, and we were told that we could ask for information at this committee on those items that were missing notes.
So there's been a review of the existing arrangements with all contractors, and at the moment, aids and adaptation is generally a reactive service. So, and this has been considered when creating the business case for going forward, and that the business case and policy will go hand in hand.
Are you happy with that answer?
It wasn't answering the item I was asking about, but I'm just trying to find it again. But it was review all elements of homes and communal areas to check they're being monitored for risks and mitigate such risks identified.
Sorry. So a review of the Big Six compliance items has been completed and a review of the estates inspections has begun. This will aid with the development of a full compliance matrix and establish risks beyond the Pennington actions.
Chair, I think there's a wider issue about making sure that the notes are there on the items before we come to committee, so that we're not having, so that
I think that's
everyone
a
understands
reasonable
where we
point.
are.
And you raised it in one of your pre-scrutiny questions, didn't you? Can that be taken away by officers, please?
Yep, we'll do. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor, before I ask a couple of questions myself? I'd like to come to the fire risk assessment, which is on page 24, for those of you following on the screen. We've still got quite a lot of outstandings here. And as of the report, as of the 1st of April, I go back to my comment earlier on, we're sitting here on the 1st of June is Friday, Saturday, or something like that. So it is 2 months out of date. What is the situation with those particular, I know they're in a low blocks, what's the situation with the 100 outstanding high risk items?
Okay. Well, we've had a detailed discussion about that today at the Fire Safety Board meeting. We're going to be looking at that in detail in the next week, but with a view to looking at those items. Potentially, some of those items may not be high risk or as urgent as they've been set out, but we're doing a sort of deep dive into the items, and then we're going to be looking to categorise what's for immediate repair, what's for maybe future planned works, because it may be considered not to be as high a risk as set out. Or potentially, if some work may not be required, as has been suggested. We have a new fire safety manager that works fire safety lead now working for us, who's an ex-firefighter and has got lots of experience of what causes fires and what risks there are, has got some different views about whether some of that work is absolutely necessary.
Are we still at 100 outstanding items? Are we still at 100 high-risk outstanding items on low blocks from the 1st of... There's still 100 outstanding?
Yes, they're outstanding insofar as that they're in a programme to be dealt with. Some of those will require inspections and be part of a programme of inspections. They're not outstanding insofar as no action has been taken against them. They've been reviewed, they've been identified, they've been looked at. And like I said, we need, now that we've done that, we need to have a further look at them to decide, which ones will require some action and which ones will be put into a programme and reprioritised, or which ones may not be necessary.
Okay, I understand that. So what sort of timeline are we looking at to get those resolved?
Well, that's why we want to have this meeting in the next 2 weeks. We have to update the regulator on this same point and this same item. So we'll have a clear timeline, once we've decided that, because if some things move to a planned programme, or some of the discussions we're having is we may tie this work in with other work. So we may carry out this work as part of a wider fire safety upgrade on the property. We may carry out this work potentially when we carry out cyclical decorations in the property. So that's something that will vary. But certainly if there's any immediate repairs that are needed, and the items that will be requiring repair, then we'll endeavour to get those done. We will endeavour to get those done, within a month of deciding that we need to get those repairs done.
Okay, I understand there's a process to go through, but when I look at the progress between the 13th of March and the 1st of April, there's good progress on the medium and low and no timescale risks. It's just those 100 outstanding high ones are the concerns. So
yes,
I think
yeah,
somehow we need some much further degree of assurance on this timing. So is there a way you can keep the committee informed about that before the next meeting? Because of all our outstanding areas, this is the one that certainly if I was a regulator and certainly if I'm a tenant, I want to make sure that they are being resolved promptly. Mr. Knight.
Yeah, I think what I'll do, what we've asked, I think what for this setting out there's going to be obviously review to determine which ones are going to programme, which ones may be a works order, which ones may not be or reviewed. There will be a position statement prepared for the regulator anyway, and I suggest that position statement is shared with the committee by the end of next week, because that's the date we've got to get things tied up by. And I probably would suggest that you've talked about assurance there, that we add this agenda item to the next.
I think we need to, because I certainly personally, and I'm getting one or two nods around the table, I'm not reassured, particularly on those high. There's good progress elsewhere, but it's those high-risk ones. So we'll leave Mr. Dark and Mr. Knight to sort that out. And on the Legionella update, which is page 26. Do we have a timing on when all those are going to be? Again, you see, we're looking at a 1st of April report. We need to look a little bit closer at how we get these updates. We solved some problems Monday, but we are now looking at a 2 months out-of-date report. So what's the progress on Legionella over the last couple of months? Mr. Hodges.
Thank you, Chair. Progress on Legionella risk assessment actions has been good. There are a number of significant pieces of work that have been undertaken. My understanding of the last report is there was 3 significant actions that were still outstanding, but these were significant investment projects in a property. The replacement of water tanks in shelter schemes, for example, or the removal of completely can't be done as a day-to-day repair. So On the whole, Legionnaire risk assessment actions of where it is a simple works order or whether it's a scheme action has been implemented. It's just the significant planned pieces of work that are outstanding now.
Which you raise a very interesting idea in my mind about one of the things we don't understand from these reports, and I don't know, this may be something officers you take away, is how we understand the complexity of any one issue, that it might be a low priority, it might be very complex, or it might be a high priority and very simple. We don't, or whether it's Legionella or fire risk or whatever, we don't quite see from these reports the complexity of the issues we're dealing with.
I'm glad you mentioned that point, because I think when we met the regulator, I think Simon actually showed them photos of the complexity. so that showed the complexity of the work that trying to do to bring it to life a little bit, really. I think Phil and Simon did a good position statement for the on Legionnaire to the compliance board. I think that was a really good position statement we had from them, and it might be that we may need to include the position statements we get because they're more up-to-date information. That's an action we'll take away.
Yeah, I think it's complexity is not an excuse. It's enabled us to understand. At the moment, I don't think we all understand what it means to say replacing a water tank is considerably different from doing something much simpler. So, Councillor Collins, I believe you wanted to ask a question.
Thanks. I was going to make a presentation comment on page 25 with the new Power BI dashboard. I find myself building quite a few of these days, and actually I'm very happy to see that we're starting to use Power BI dashboards to present this data. The reason why I guess you would want to do that is to make the data easy to understand at a glance and compare across things. However, presentation-wise, this layout does not help with that. There are two critical sort of design choices here that I think should be revised. First, you're using the same color across multiple charts to mean different things. This makes it very hard to glance at it and say, oh, complete, there are 75% completed. That means like 75% on risk level completed? No, that's high risk, medium risk. And the second comment is that in principle, humans find angles and areas very hard to compare against. You want lengths are much easier, therefore bar charts are a much favored way of showing these things, especially if they're all stacked next to each other. Two comments there. Great to see a Power BI dashboard, but this is quite hard to compare against at the moment.
I think in this case, I may actually slightly defend the officers that all of us process things, information differently. You like bar charts, I'm happy with pie charts, or tables or whatever. So, but I think your comments are well-founded. I think it's something you need to think about how you, Ms. Hodges, yes, you're the expert on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a position we wanted to get to. Both myself and my colleague Daniel Leach have taken a great interest in Power BI and its ability to report and provide live dashboards, queries directly from the database right there and then, and provide you with the information really so much from an officer's point of view, so they can see first thing in the morning or whenever they happen to look at it, what their position is or what their workload might look like that day. But obviously snapshots, dashboards like that lend themselves to then the management reports afterwards. Obviously you've got the drill down. I take on board what you say in terms of consistency of colour across there. Bear in mind, Power BI hasn't necessarily been adopted corporately across the organisation totally yet. Myself and Daniel and Dominic in the housing team and my colleagues over there and Paul Smith's team have really sort of led this from WDC's point of view. I think Daniel particularly is seen as the go-to person for Power BI, as nobody in ICT will support it at the moment. So it's new stuff. We're getting there with it. These are reports that are being produced to serve a specific purpose, but quite quickly they will grow, they will develop.
Just to add, I think one of the things we talked through is if we go from where we were at using spreadsheets or paper, within a couple of months we're now testing Microsoft Power BI. So for assurance, that's the data maturity improving, and also the compliance report with the big six. Also, that's progressed massively in over 12 months as well. So It's work in progress, but the fact that we're trying it, we're using it, I think should also be welcomed.
Any other comments, members, before I raise a couple of other points? Page 44, the Residents Involvement Group. Again, we're back to communication with residents here. The membership is tenants and responsible officers, but I don't see any councillor on that group, and I'd like to see a councillor, I presume Councillor Adkins as portfolio holder, be a member of that resident involvement group. Councillor Davison, is that something you think you can support?
I'd certainly want to check with Councillor Adkins, but in principle, yes.
Okay, can we give that an action item to Councillor Davison? It's never come to a meeting without getting an action. I know, but he's, I'm sure he's perfectly happy to have that delegated to him. These minor points, but I will ask it. Proportion of homes for which all required asbestos management surveys or re-inspections have been carried out. If a house doesn't have asbestos, why are we re-inspecting it? Or is this just a wording issue? On page 50. Can I, rather than take up committee time, can I ask that to be asked a question to... Oh, yes.
I would certainly answer that by saying that if it hasn't got asbestos, we wouldn't be re-inspecting it. There'd be no reason for
it. It's a wording issue.
Survey.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's move on. Any other comments, please, under section 8? Oh, sorry, not section 8, item 8, compliance plan. Now, are we noting this report? I think we made noting the progress made since the last meeting, and page 5. Noting the change to delivery dates, etc. So I need a proposer for that, please. Councillor Collins, and a seconder. Councillor Dixon. Can I have a show of hands of all those who in favour of that? Thank you. That was everybody? Yes. So let's move on to the item 9, identification and remediation of damp. Who is leading on that? Is that Councillor Melrose or it's Mr. Dark? Okay.
Hello again. So this is a report to which essentially reviews the operation and impact of the damp and mold policy that was originally presented to Cabinet on the 9th of August 2023. That document was approved for consultation with the residents group. What's happened since then is there have been further recommendations around what that damp and mould policy should include in other steps that we need to take for damp and mould. These steps are explained in the document. So the policy did go to residents. It was consulted with the residents in the spring and summer of 2024. Those comments have been incorporated into the policy. The other change in development that's happened, I'm sure members will be aware of AWAB's law and the very sad case of the young child that died. And there's been constant developments. There's been a consultation exercise that was operated by the government. And there's been various releases of information and expectations for what AWAB's law will actually prescribe. So, so there's been a period of time of that evolving, and the policy has been adapted and amended over time. So this report now is bringing this policy to this committee to then recommend that then goes back to the Cabinet for formal approval. And then what the report also does is it just gives some background information on the service, some sort of key information like the volume of repairs. So it's 1,300 damp and mould repairs orders every year. So that's actually around 10% of all of the repairs order. So obviously it shows that there's a substantial number of orders that are raised. I mentioned about the evolution of the policy, but when that policy was first written, it really only had a couple of key commitments. One was to carry out an inspection within 5 days, then carry out work in line with usual repair timescales, and then do some follow-up after 12 months. So those were the sort of key commitments in the original document. With the developments that have happened, then, you know, and the expectations for AWAB's law, there's now 6 sort of key commitments in the policy document. In summary, there's actually more if you look at the detail. But essentially, we're not just looking at carrying out, you know, an inspection, but we've now got timescales for inspecting, carrying out an investigation, and reporting back to the resident. So within 16 days of, for example, within 16 days of a report of damp and mould, then we have to carry out that inspection, an investigation, and then report back to the resident what our findings are and what we're going to do about it. That doesn't mean we do everything within those 16 days. If you need specialist, you know, if you need some specialist monitoring or you need some specialist investigation, then obviously you would have to do that. But the idea would be that you make that clear in your report to the resident, you know, exactly what's going to be happening. Also, we're looking to improve the speed at which we attend to things like washing down the mould. If there is a lot of mould in the property, we're looking to do that. One of the key things around AWAB's law and around best practice with damp and mould policy is to begin to understand, if we don't already have the information, understand the family makeup of the properties, understand the health issues that the families have, so we can start building that information, we can start collecting that information, we can use that to help prioritise the work that we're doing, and we can help to use that to then assess risks to the residents of that, you know, to the health of the family. And that list is evolving from initially AWAB's law in terms of young children with respiratory issues to adults with respiratory issues, autoimmune conditions, pregnancy. So there's a huge range of health issues now that we need to start thinking about and collecting that information and that data to help us assess the risk to the family, help us make decisions about potentially, you know, is it suitable for the family to stay in the property? You know, is it best that we actually, you know, move a family out of a property temporarily? And as I said, and then, you know, we will still have, you know, defined timescales for dealing then with the works, but you know, we will then start monitoring that more specifically. So those are the sort of key new commitments. there's a lot of information in the report in terms of the, the reporting and the impact and the improvements that we need to make on the reporting in order to get ourselves into a position. We've recruited a dedicated damp and mould surveyor who's been in post a month now. So what that damp and mould surveyor can do is not just manage these cases in terms of some of the more complex cases that may come through, but their role will be to oversee and monitor some of the smaller cases. You may just have a report that the mastic around the bath is mouldy, or there's a tiny bit of mould in a cupboard in the bedroom. So you will have those sort of minor cases, but with the new surveyor in post, then we'll have oversight of those cases. We'll have oversight of that. And be in a better position to identify where the contractors need chasing or where there's issues with access to the property. Surprisingly, we still get issues with access, getting access to properties, even with damp and mould cases. So, we still do get issues getting access. So that's something that we'll be able to increase our monitoring on. We've also set up, Simon and Dan have done some excellent work setting up the case processing system within Active H. So at the moment, inspections and orders and repairs requests are in different parts of the system. Case processing can bring that together. So if we identify this is going to be a significant damp and mould case, we can make the decision, this is going to be more significant. We'll put this through our case processing system. That will then link everything together. It will have timescales allocated to the processes. It will trigger those steps, and will provide a much more efficient way of actually monitoring those cases and keeping a track on those cases, and delivering them.
So
I think
can I throw it open to the members now after the comprehensive introduction there? So members, you got any questions? Councillor Bird.
Yes, on the complete the permanent repair in reasonable time, could be 720 or 60 calendar days. Is that from the start of the investigation, or would you say that you would commence the investigation and inspect reports of damp within 5 days, then discover they're a bit bigger than you think, so you then go on to your 60 days?
The timescales from the work will be from when you raise the order, having done the investigation. Sorry, is that you?
As a tenant with a problem, when would I get the work done?
Sorry, when?
As a tenant with a problem,
yeah.
When would I know I was going to get the work done, and by when?
So I mentioned about we would give a report to the tenant after 16 days. So at that point, when we we will advise the tenant, what work we're going to be carried out, and we'll let them know what priority that work will have. Hope that answers the question.
So on what you've said there is you've got 16 days to report back to the tenant, then you'll do the work which comes 720 or 60 days. But before then, you've added 5 days before you actually go to have a look at the damp. So you're adding a lot of days in there, actually not achieving anything for the tenant.
Sorry, the 5 days...
If you started, you commence the investigation, and you get a report.
Yeah.
You've got 5 days to do that.
5 days to carry out an inspection.
Yes. When you've carried out the inspection, you then need to decide what you're going to do.
Yeah, so that would be another 11 days.
Right. And then it's quite big, so it could be up to 60 days. So you're going on for 3 or 4 months before you do anything?
Potentially. It will obviously depend on what work is required. Let's say, I mean, for example, if you have rising damp and you have damp plaster in a kitchen or a bathroom, you may have to take the kitchen or the bathroom out in order to carry out that damp work, allow the plaster to dry out, put the kitchen back again. So some damp jobs are much more extensive than
I understand that.
than
What I'm
others,
saying
yeah.
is that there's a potential lag before you actually get to, I'm going to do something.
I mean,
for instance, if it was a bad job,
sorry,
or
yeah.
if it was a bad job and it came in at number 5, which is complete the permanent repair in reasonable time in line with repairs policy, you've got to get to that point and then you decide how long it's going to take. So you're going to carry out an activity ahead of that to get to make a decision point on the permanent repair that's wanted. What I'm trying to get at is you get a damp issue, you get it reported to you, and then you've got 5 or 10 days to actually have a look and see what you're going to do before you really start doing any detailed work.
Yeah, these are the timescales that are set out there. If we went to do an inspection and it was a very simple job to do, then we wouldn't necessarily wait 16 days. We wouldn't necessarily wait until the end of 16 days to raise the order.
Well, I've got rising damp, which is an urgent problem. How long would I wait?
And so if it was an urgent problem, what we set out in the policy, that in the cases where we believe it's urgent, or if we get information from the resident about the health risks, then we would prioritise inspection, we would prioritise mitigation. So if it was identified that there was a serious issue with mould and we had photographs of that, for example, or if a contractor came back to us or a housing officer or surveyor came back to us with photographs, then we would immediately order a mould wash and a hygiene. We wouldn't wait in order to do that. So that's what the changes that we've made to the policy are making those. Making those.
So that's new. That's a change to policy. It's not
Sorry?
That's new. It's a change to policy.
That's yes.
Not as it was 2 months ago.
That's been added to the policy. The only thing we're not sure at this stage is that AWAB's law at the moment, there's no regulation and there's no guidance that's been issued with AWAB's law. I put a briefing note about that in the paper. We don't know at this stage what they're going to be suggesting that we do. We know at this stage they've said you have to do urgent work within 24 hours. What they haven't said at this stage is what they consider urgent work to be. Now, at the moment, we would consider urgent work to be you've got a leak, you've got something that's causing a problem, that's what you fix in that 24 hours. And that would be sort of an emergency work as per our, the emergency works defined in our repairs policy. At this stage, we don't know what what the government are going to say they consider emergency work to be. That we are waiting on. So, if they come back and say, for example, if they come back and say, you should wash down any cases of mould, you should wash down, you should send a contractor around to wash down the mould within 24 hours, regardless of small amounts, large amounts, whatever. We don't know that yet. So, that's what we are waiting on that information.
That is no reason not to implement this policy.
Sorry?
That is no reason not to implement this policy.
No.
So, but I think we need to be aware that it may have to be revised within months.
Yes.
And the cabinet need to be aware of that too.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you do here, if you've got an issue, whether it's a big one or a small one, but you've got mould, black mould or whatever, you'd clean it to buy time.
Councillor Jones, did I see you have a question?
Yes, hopefully a fairly straightforward one. Item 6, education and training. The first point there is the council will publish guidance to tenants and advise them when they need to report occurrences of damp and mould in their home. What did you envisage that advice looking like, please?
Yeah. sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry.
What did you envisage that
No,
advice?
sorry, sorry.
You said you'll publish guidance and that it will advise us. It will advise tenants when they need to report damp and mould, and I wondered how you envisaged that advice sort of taking shape. Will it be in pamphlets? Will it be in newsletters? Will it be in a letter directly to them? What kind of things did you have in mind?
We've currently got information on the website, haven't we, regarding damp and mould. We will review that. We will review that information. And
Mr. Dark, if I could also add if I could just add, what is so that's a reactive communication policy. Are we going to proactively communicate this damp and mould policy to tenants?
Sorry. I think in terms of actually reporting of damp and mould and the signs to be looking out for, if Lisa was here or Caroline Russell, I'd say that there's actually been quite a lot of communication, or there's been some communication that's been put out over the last couple of years through Caroline Russell's team, tenant engagement exercises, damp and mould, what to look for or how to report it, how to mitigate it even. In fact, in a leaflet that was jointly done with Nuneaton and Bedworth and Rugby Council, I believe. It was a combination of 3 councils coming together to produce that information back, which is being used, but obviously that's come through the landlord management side.
But I think my point is, maybe Councillor Jones are putting words into your mouth here. Once we get this policy in place, let's assume it's signed off in Cabinet in 6 weeks' time, how will tenants proactively know that this policy is now in place, rather than having to go out and seek the answer on the website or whatever? And again, I'm particularly thinking about those tenants who are less internet literate.
Yeah, I suppose to go back to Alan Bow's point and to sort of address all of those points, first of all, is it's been our responsibility, and the assets team feels a responsibility to rewrite that policy in line with the current AWAB's law legislation. At the moment, there is secondary legislation yet to provide the fine detail around timescales. You're quite right. We've now got the policy. There's no reason why that shouldn't be implemented. There's also procedure around that as well, which I think you're talking about, is how procedurally does that work. There is a process flow chart that's recently been undertaken with that. In terms of communicating that out, I think that's, if I may, Darren, that's something that at least would be a question to Lisa Barker and Caroline Russell in particular, and tenant engagement, or even Paul, customer service team. How you would that change in policy? How do we get that out to our tenants?
Mr. Knight.
Just going, I think if you go back to one of the earlier discussion around tenant communication, so what we'd be expecting landlord services to now do, that's the team responsible for the housing officers, is to take that communication to the resident, the tenant newsletter. We'll have obviously information on the website, and there'll be a whole series of actions for the housing officers and the housing team to take forward. So there will be a mini action plan around that communication element. I think this goes back to the committee understanding how the effectiveness and the approach to tenant communication, how we approach it for multiple policies. So it will be the same for any policy change. If there's new policies come into place, how do we as a council effectively engage tenants, help them understand it, and then follow it through? And I think for me that's probably links, Josie, to the agenda item for the resident engagement and communication element, really, because I think it's a question that keeps coming up, and I think what you need as a committee is to understand how do we consistently communicate those changes to tenants and engage with them, and is that framework actions sort of nailed down? If it is, then fine, moving forward there is that set way of doing it, but if it's not quite there, then you get a chance to scrutinise and check it. That's probably what I would suggest we take it forward.
Councillor Jones, you've got to follow up?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Darren, for that. I think in the last meeting as well, it was expressed that there was, from Lisa when we had her in the room, that there were many avenues through which tenants can get in touch with us about various things. But yes, I agree. I think as a wider point, it would be quite useful to have a more
structured approach to making sure that residents know about all the good work you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what, you know, with Phil coming in, he's brought that real good technical understanding into the team, and we've also, as I think he's mentioned, we talked about resourcing earlier on. So one of that big action plan of resourcing was the damp, mould and condensation surveyor, which has been appointed. So that should also hopefully give you assurance that we're increasing the capacity and the skills within the team to meet these challenges as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, I've got Councillor Collins and Councillor Dixon. Are your questions related to communications, or are they totally separate? Not totally
Communication with residents.
Sorry?
Communication with residents
Yes,
on this.
Councillor Collins. Then.
Though specifically on the report of the outcome of the investigation, what form does that take? How does the tenant receive that report? What is the definition of a report, I suppose, in this context?
Sorry. Yeah, there's been no guidance issued on that at this stage. So that's something that we need to work through. We are launching a pilot study. We are going to do a pilot study. I was discussing that with the damp and mould surveyor today. You know, we need to work through, we need to do some cases, we need to go and carry out some surveys, we need to start developing some, you know, reporting, start developing some letters. We can have some discussion with the resident improvement group as well about this. I think the key thing for me will be simplicity. We don't want to bombard residents with lots of detailed reports and expert reports on that. I think the key thing will be simplicity and you know, just being very clear, you know, what the issue is. And then we've got in the policy different categories of dampness, so we could explain it that way. We could say, you know, you have rain coming into your property, you have rising damp, you have a problem with condensation. So you know we can be sort of just clearly setting out what the problem is. We then set that out, and we would then set out what we're going to do about that, what the remedy will be, and then you know give them the timescales for that. So. Yeah, as I say, but we know it's something that we need to develop, and you know, we've got support from HQN, from an expert from HQN with that pilot scheme, so that we'll work with them to see well what's the industry doing, what are other councils doing, what are other housing associations doing. You know, to get that right, and we will then, you know, be able to refine that during that pilot study, and then you know come up with a form of reporting.
Just to be clear, then, so you're kind of working with the idea at the moment that it's going to be a piece of paper that the resident receives in the post. Have we explored? I mean, do we know if it's faster to just report to them with a phone number and therefore bring down that 16 calendar days, or does that full report need to be the full report?
Mm-hmm. I think Councillor Collins, these are all very good questions, but I'm getting the sense the officers haven't yet worked through this. But I think this is exactly one of the key, is the communication again, and how clear and easily the customer understands.
I suppose the real key one I want to get to is, why does it take 2 days from concluding the inspection for them to receive the report? And why do we not think we can deliver it to them the same day?
Right? Yeah.
Sorry. I think a couple of bits. I think we've got the draft policy which we need to get approved. I think as Phil set out, the next piece is to design the process for reporting back, and also because sometimes we also need to make sure we set out times because we know we're going to hit. There's nothing worse than we'll do it within a day than not do it, because things can get in the way. If you've done surveys all day, you will need a day or so to catch up with your paperwork, because you're getting through all the surveys, you're crunching through, and then you'll get them, and then you'll catch up with your paperwork to communicate back. I also think as well it's important that with some surveys you might want to do a bit of validation and check as well to make sure you get the accuracy. And I think the other bit as well is how do you test how you report back and what tenants' preferences are in terms of how that's done. So I think for me there's a number of questions there that needs, in my view, to go through the resident involvement group to test out and check with them to help refine it. The good questions, that sort of questions, we probably want to test with tenants and get their view as well.
Councillor Collins.
I think it points towards there are some of these numbers in these KPIs which are probably ones you can stick to, but if you're saying a couple of days, justifiable to review things, let things settle, you can't get that to the resident even through first-class post before the deadline. So I think you would probably need more days if you're going to buffer it because of postage.
Can I suggest, I think your questions are absolutely on the nail. I don't think the officers are going to give us a solution here tonight. We shouldn't be designing a solution tonight. But I think this is important to get this sort of solution clear before it goes to Cabinet.
Would it be fair to then take these as draft timescales rather than final timescales? Is that how I should be interpreting this?
Yeah, I think there's some good challenge there, Councillor Collins, which I think that's something we need to take away. I think we recognise that the process will need to be worked through, because I think there is a lack of clarity in terms of it's sort of feel set out sort of nationally. And it could be the fact that actually is the report back initially a phone call to explain we've surveyed it, this is the course of action, then it's followed up. Because I think talking it through sometimes tends may be better initially than just getting a letter in the post a bit later on. So I think that's a good challenge there, and I think what we may want to do is, as we define the process to support it, I think that may want to come back for you to have a look at as well, to make sure you're comfortable with it. But good challenge, and we'll take that away. But no, let's get the policy right. Let's then take the next action is then to break it down in terms of the process, make sure that's then right, and begin to break up the stages of work on that one, really. Yeah.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the work that's going on this policy. I recognise the important public health issue that we are looking at here, and that's really where my question is, as a professional in public health, looking at who can report. I'm thinking that perhaps some people that are going to be picking up a lot of these problems are going to be maybe practice nurses that are doing asthma clinics, and that are, or other people that are taking health histories, and that this might be a way that we can cut out or identify some of those vulnerable residents that you are looking to maybe prioritise in the process. A referral, if it were simple, from a professional would be a way of identifying some of the problems. And also just wondering whether maybe the Director of Public Health may be somebody that would be a useful resource to use in maybe looking at these timetables of work. They might be specialists in the subject.
Mr. Knight.
Yeah, can I thank you, Councillor Dixon. I'm probably going to suggest in minutes, Josie, put that in as my idea. I think there is, I think there's two bits there. I think there is the bit around the engagement with health professionals around, because they're going to people's homes on a regular basis. They may spot things that tenants may not think to report or not have the awareness to, and linking the condition of the property with sort of their health situation as well. So I'm going to suggest an action here for Caroline Russell's team, that once the policy is approved, that there is an action to engage with health and health discipline, regarding building up their awareness of what the council's there to do, support tenants with the condition of their home regarding this issue, And it'd be really interesting to understand what their reflection back is once they've done that. And also linked to that, I think there's also probably another action regarding later down the line for training for counsellors, and there's also to help build up your knowledge, because you go into people's homes as well, and you may spot things, and actually that awareness. So I think there's two bits there, but I think the health engagement on this, I think, is actually critically important, and I think that's an action we do. So, yeah, my idea.
I would actually like to propose in 5.1, roles, responsibilities, authorities. We've got tenants, elected members, officers, contractors. We ought to put something in there specifically before it goes to cabinet about, well, I don't know, health visitors is not quite the right term, is it? Health practitioners should actually go. The policy actually should be amended before it goes to cabinet.
I think we can include the reference to health practitioners in the policy.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
are we agreed on that, members?
Yeah. That's an addition we can make for cabinet feedback as well.
Okay. Other questions? I've just got one. Thank you, officers, for the work on this. This is, we've come a long way, but under 1.8, lots of good things about feedback and trying to get the investigation. The one thing I spotted that is missing here is any root cause analysis. If it's a leaking drain pipe, it's fairly obvious, but if it's not a leaking drain pipe, we don't seem to be getting to the bottom of the problem. We're solving the problem, but we don't know why the problem happened, so we can learn going forward for other tenders, etc. Any comments on that, Mr. Dunn?
Sorry, one thing we'll be looking to do with that resource and improving our data is well, two things actually. Is one, to ensure we're doing more of a root cause analysis. So that's going to be a very key thing going forward. You know, to make sure that we are actually identifying the permanent cause of the issue, not just a temporary fix.
So what I would like to suggest is that is specifically mentioned in the policy, because it's not at the moment.
Yeah.
I think I completely agree with you.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'd like to actually be very clear that it's in the policy.
Yeah.
Can we give that as an action? Because I think we are in agreement. Yeah. It just needs to be added in some wording somewhere appropriate. Needs to be added in.
Yeah, it just needs to be a reference to the policy. That's part of the, when we complete work, there'll be a review to understand root cause. Yeah, is it a one-off issue, or is it actually, is it affecting multiple, say, properties in a block? So is it root cause, or is it a one-off issue?
Yeah, exactly where I'm coming from.
Just a sentence to that effect.
That's all. That's all. I'll be quite happy with that.
Yeah, and improving data, as I said, having that you know, that wider analysis of trends, if you like, of trends in the data. What is that telling you? And it's actually something that I did with another local authority, and within 6 months we had 4 groups of 30 properties in certain streets in certain areas that we had identified through that sort of trend analysis that needed a collective solution. So
I think we're talking the same language here, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other comments, questions, council comments?
I just wanted to ask, in the recommendation that we're about to vote on, are we specifically voting on the policy, which I think is very good, and especially with the amendments that are being proposed, and are we also voting to recommend those timelines that are being suggested in the appendix? Because I would question if those need a bit of work before we could recommend those as they stand.
I think one of the things we're going to have to recognise, the timelines here, is to ask for this to come back to us as a committee after 6 months. What I suggest is we don't delay this policy. We get it taken to cabinet, we try it for 6 months, and we come back, well, we're 6 months from July cabinet, so it's probably going to be either January or 27th of Jan. Let's put it on the work agenda to look at the 27th of January. What I don't want to do is to delay this, because I think the policy is too important not to go forward to cabinet on this scheduled timetable.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, I would agree with that, because I think if I go back around pace of delivery, so I think for me, because I think what Phil's also highlighted is the regulatory environment is still clarifying in terms of best practice and those sorts of things, really. So I think we've got some amendments to make to the policy fund tonight, get it to Cabinet for approval, test its application, then bring it back in terms of effectiveness in the new year, and then you've got a chance to bed in, and any refinements then needed, then go back at a later date for review. So that's probably how I would suggest it. And also there'd be maybe more sector learning coming at that point as well, that we may want to reflect on at the same time.
And we may have more details on airworks law as well. I think my point, Councillor Collins, is I think you've got a very valid point here, and indeed Councillor Bode as well. But I'd rather get this policy going. Let's find the pitfalls. Rather than having a perfect policy delivered in 6 months' time or 8 months' time, let's have a 99% policy and get it going and see what happens. Are you okay with that?
It's perfectly reasonable.
Okay. So our recommendations committee are, well, first of all, we're asked to note the contents of the report. And then secondly, that we recommend that the revised policy with those, and I'm adding this to the statement with the couple of changes we've talked about tonight. The revised policy is presented to Cabinet for approval. May I have a proposer for those two? Councillor Dixon, thank you. May I have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Can I have all those in favour? Thank you very much. Let's move on to our... Now, I'm conscious of time. We've just gone 2¼ hours since we started. I propose to continue rather than have a 20-minute break and keep going. Are you okay with that? Okay, thank you. So we're on to housing repairs and maintenance procurement tender, item 10. Which officer is leading this? Is you or?
I think just to start, really, I think you've had briefings from and updates from obviously from Lisa, Phil, and Arc Property on this, and so I suppose the report's sort of taken as read in terms of progress. This is the most important service of tenants, and it's one we've got to make sure we've got mobilised, ready for April 26. And if you've got any questions on progress, then Phil or I can happy to answer any questions you've got around this. Obviously, there'll be further updates as we progress anyway.
So, any comments on this very comprehensive document? Have we beaten everybody into submission tonight? Councillor Bowser, I knew you'd come up with something.
I couldn't. Having read it, you'll get it. I think someone in here is talking. We'd have 5 companies for tendering. Seemed to be the impression. There was some debate about if we knocked some out, we'd perhaps add another one in there. Is that right? So that we start off with 5 people invited to tender, and then we cut it down. But we don't cut it down. If we drop below 5, we add another one in. Was what I seem to pick up from here.
Yeah, the process with the procurement-specific questionnaire is open to anybody at this stage. So at the last count, we'd had 51 suppliers actually look at that. And then yes, it's our intention. It's our intention to maybe once you get to that next stage, to then, you know, to have the top 5 scoring companies, and then that would be 5 companies that we will then invite to tender.
The impression was if one dropped out, but it said I don't want to do it, you'd bring in another one off your list. To make it back up to the 5 when you start that process.
Yes, potentially. That might depend on timescales, because obviously we've got set timescales for the tendering processes. The procurement-specific questionnaire stage, there will be mandatory criteria. So some contractors won't meet that mandatory criteria. There will then be a scoring criteria as well. So if we then if we were to invite 5 contractors, but one contractor came back very quickly and said, no, thank you, then we would have time to obviously go to the next scoring contractor on that list. But if somebody came in, a week before the tender return date, then obviously that would be more problematical.
Councillor Jones.
Under point 3.7, question 29 of the evaluations. Excuse me, 1 second. Sorry, can I come back in a moment? Sorry.
Yes. Other comments and questions? Councillor Jones, it does look as though you may be up anyway, so.
Ah,
yeah.
Sorry, I can actually go. Sorry, I apologise for that. I was highlighting the wrong item. So it says, sorry, Q27 says business and service continuity. In a scenario where we were contracting a business currently, which was not providing an adequate level of service according to all of our reviews, would the business score highly or lowly under that continuity marker?
So, was your question, would we score that highly or lowly? Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We will. I mean, there will be a weighting applied to all of the questions. Business and service continuity would have sort of a moderate rating applied to it. The higher weightings that we would apply will be around the contractor's ability to deliver the service, to organise the service, to mobilise the service. So those are the ones that carry the higher weighting. Obviously, the business and service continuity, would have a more moderate rating. It wouldn't have the lowest
Forgive me,
rating.
sorry, I think I maybe explained the question wrong there. If we were currently contracting a contractor, one would infer that that contractor would be given quite a high score for continuity if they were to be re-tendered or put a new offer in.
I think we're getting a little bit off.
Yeah.
There's a weighting system here that will be applied equally to all contractors.
Yes, yeah.
Regardless of whether there's an existing contractor or not.
Yes.
Am I interpreting that correctly?
How could a continuity, forgive me, how could a continuity factor be weighted highly for someone who is not continuing to do the work?
I think that's probably more commercial. Yeah, I don't think it's one for us.
We've got an exempt item. We've got an exempt item later on. So I think if we're going around the procurement element, we might want to just cover it off.
Yeah, but I think every tenderer will be scored on the same weighting, basically, is what we're saying, on the same basis. And tender A may score high or low, depending on whatever the circumstances are. I don't think we're following your question.
So if we already had someone providing the service,
then we can't talk about any existing contractors in public session. We are going to go into private session straight after this item, so maybe you want to ask that question later on.
Very good, I'll wait.
Yeah. Any other questions? Councillor Dixon.
It's a really tiny detail, but one of the KPIs, so on, it's H2, health and safety, it says failure to follow PPE guidelines. I would say it was unacceptable to follow guidelines at any time, but it does say less than 5 instances in a month.
Where are you, Councillor Dixon? Sorry.
So I am on, it was on 3, it's above 3 point something. Page 48 of item 10, so it's above 3.2 at the table.
Okay, yes, H2.
Yeah.
Failure to follow PPE guidelines. Yes.
The proposed target is less than or equal to 5 instances in a month. I would say that you shouldn't have any instances of not following PPE guidelines.
Okay, I'm now with the question. Mr. Dark?
I think failure to follow PPE guidelines is one of the largest, is often the most common issue that you have. Especially when you have large contracts like this, and where you may have subcontractors that are appointed, to those contracts as well. Bearing in mind with this contract, it's repairs and maintenance. It's either an individual or a pair of people going out across multiple properties. It's not something that the contractor can control. I did challenge ARC, who have written the specification around this point, around a lot of these points, because I did challenge them, and I have asked them, are you certain this is representative for a contract of this nature? And they said that they were happy. But this is something that we will be increasingly monitoring, because we will be asking. We've written this into the code of conduct for the contractors, so we've written it into that. We will also be including that in the satisfaction survey that we ask the residents. So we will ask the residents, did they carry, were they wearing, protective equipment? And it's not just PPE, it's also, we've also written into the code of conduct around wearing shoe socks when they're going into tenants' properties, for example. So we've written in something around that. So it's about protecting, not just their own personal protection, but protection for the residents as well.
Okay. Any other comments? In that case, this report is only to note. We don't need to vote. It will be coming back in September, and we'll want to see progress there in September, and a deeper dive into how the progress has gone, and a proper report on that. So it's not the last time that we'll see this, and we'll see it probably more than once in the next 6 to 9 months. So at this point, move on to item 11, public and press. Andy, thank you for coming tonight. I propose to exclude public and press for the reasons set out in the agenda, to consider resolving that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, that the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items by reason of the likely disclosure of exempt information within the paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, following the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. So I'm proposing that. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bode, thank you. The public and press have left, but may I have a vote of approval, please? Thank you. Right.